I've been talking about it to myself and to anybody that would listen. I was gonna do a ranking of all of the X-Men movies. And now we're finally here and we get to rank every single X-Men movie. That includes Deadpool 1 and 2 and also the New Mutants. I love movies. I love Marvel. I love comic books. I love Wolverine. And so let's go. Let's get this ranking started. And I switched out my poster. We got a Logan poster up there. You can't really tell because the light is shining on it. But that's my Logan poster. Kind of a spoiler what I'm going to pick as number one. But hey, just like the stock market, let's get crazy and get in there. As you can see, got all the movies listed there. And I'm going to start from the very first movie to the very last movie. So we're going to start X-Men and end on New Mutants. And we're just going to tear it up. We're just going to tear it up. Off to a good start. Anyways, for anybody who doesn't know, X-Men came out a couple years after Blade. The success of Blade basically jump-started the resurgence of comic book movies. And so you had Blade, and then you had X-Men, and then a year later you had Spider-Man. And it's the success of these three movies that basically jump-started the comic book movie era. And it's still going on today. X-Men did so much right, but at the same time being like a cheesy, nostalgia-driven movie. Like Hugh Jackman as Wolverine is amazing. He captures the essence of Wolverine so great. But you have people like James Marsden, Halle Berry, Famke Janssen, Rebecca Romijn, and Stamos. She was Rebecca Romijn Stamos at that time. But you have Patrick Stewart and Sir Ian McKellen as Magneto and Professor X. And the cast is just stacked. And it's great. It's a great movie. But at the same time, the dialogue, oh man, it does not age well at all. I mean, everyone knows the Toad line. We all know most of Storm's lines are hokey and corny. And Halle Berry, God bless her soul, because she had some of the worst lines of those movies. And I don't think anybody could deliver those lines. And we're going to put X-Men, we're going to put it B tier. And although it set the standard for like what was to come, it wasn't like the greatest movie. There were some cool action scenes, but a lot of stuff doesn't age well. And this movie is amazing. It takes what X-Men did and just multiplied it while also subtracting all the bad stuff from the first ones. It came out in 2003 and it just crushed the box office. It was absolutely everything that people wanted out of a superhero sequel for literally a year. People were like, is X-Men 2 the greatest superhero movie ever? And it was until Spider-Man 2 came out. And then a couple of years later, more movies came out. Although these are early comic book era movies, they're still great. They still hold up. We're going to put X2 A tier. X2 A tier. X2 A tier. Sounds like Elon Musk's kid's name. Boy, oh boy, this movie is a stinker. It is like even worse than a stinker. It's like that foul stench of like a garbage place. You're not standing next to the landfill. It's the wind that's blowing the stink of the landfill down into the valley, and you can just smell it and you just feel it in your nostrils and you're like, oh, what is this? Why has it done all of the bad things? They misuse Cyclops. They misuse Professor X. They misuse Kitty Pryde. They misuse Wolverine. They misuse everybody in this movie. And it's just a waste of time. They turned Juggernaut into the meme that was big at the time. But he didn't need to be a meme. And also Vinnie Jones looks weird. Last Stand is firmly in the F tier. No doubt about it. Next up, we have X-Men Origins Wolverine. And this was the X-Men's first foray into like a spin-off. Out of all the people that they would want to spin off, Wolverine would be the first choice because he's the biggest character from all of the X-Men movies, and they already killed off Cyclops, and Jean Grey is gone. The beginning opening with Liev Schreiber and Hugh Jackman as Sabretooth and Wolverine growing up. Well, they're not growing up, actually. They're just slowly aging as they go through different wars in American history. And it's just amazing to watch. And, you know, they introduced Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds. This is Ryan Reynolds' first appearance as Deadpool. And they have a nice cast of characters around Wolverine. And there's just so much bad CGI. And the biggest cardinal sin that they do in comic book movies is they ruin a character from the comic books. And of course, I'm talking about the ruining of Deadpool. He comes back later in the movie as the main bad guy, and he looks like Baraka from Mortal Kombat, and his mouth is taped over with skin, and it's just truly, truly bad. But it's not as bad as Last Stand because it's actually kind of watchable in a funny way. So we're going to put Origins Wolverine at E. Growing up as a kid, reading Deadpool and playing Deadpool in all the X-Men games, I just loved the character of Deadpool as a kid, and they just completely pooped on him. They pooped on him. For some reason in my brain, I thought there was a longer gap between X-Men Origins Wolverine and First Class, but there was only 2 years in between the two movies. And basically what First Class does is it resets the X-Men universe, which we find out later on that no, it's not a reset, it's just a different timeline, which is like the X-Men bread and butter. It's like, hey, we got 900 million timelines, let's reset them. Anyways, First Class reintroduces us to Professor X and Magneto when they're young. Boy, oh boy, does Michael Fassbender just absolutely nail the origins of Magneto. Because you understand his motivations, you see where he's coming from, you see the horrors that the Nazis have put upon him. To see him so vengeful and thirsty for revenge, it's like, you're like, yeah, dude, I understand. And, you know, from Professor X's side, he doesn't really disagree with Magneto. He just doesn't agree with how he's going about his revenge. This might be the only controversial thing out of my list, is I like Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique. It's just they wrote Mystique the wrong way. And that's probably my only hang up with this movie. Kevin Bacon as the main bad guy is just sweet. It's just sweet. So we're going to go ahead and put First Class. We're going to put it right here on the B tier. I would say it's a step above X-Men, but a step below X2. And I don't have there's nothing between A and B to put it there, so we're putting it B. It's kind of weird because I like the movie. I like the long sequence where Wolverine's fighting a bunch of ninjas, but overall it's just not a memorable movie. And that's kind of sucks. I know they did an extended version that sort of changed the flow of the movie and made it better, but overall doesn't really put Wolverine anywhere different than he was at the end of X-Men Origins Wolverine. So I'm just going to put it at C tier because it's still watchable, but it's kind of forgettable. Up next we have Days of Future Past, and they take the characters from First Class and just fast forward them a couple of years into a different decade, but they add in Wolverine and they add in time travel and they add alternate timelines, and it just goes insane. It clashes the first three movies with the new movies, and it's just so good. So good as a X-Men fan, just watching all of this flow together. Yeah, the idea and execution of it was rushed. I would say Days of Future Past is probably the most emotional I ever got in a comic book movie until the end of Infinity War. And it's just seeing the reunion of Wolverine with all of his former friends that had been dead for so long in his timeline, but now they're alive. Oh man, it just hits you so good because it's just a good ending for Wolverine. And yeah, I'm just going to put it, I don't know if people will agree with this. But I'm going to put it up here in the S tier. I think it deserves S tier. I do. And if you don't believe that, fight me in the comments. Yeah, it's kind of cringy, but at the same time, that's Deadpool, and sort of internet culture has sort of shaped and changed Deadpool, but it's still fun. Ryan Reynolds has a blast in it, and it's a rated R comic book movie that is fun, that is interesting, that doesn't sacrifice what the character is best at, and yeah, it's just fun. And we're going to go ahead and put that Deadpool in the B tier. Actually, we're going to put it in A tier because I really liked it and I thought it was fun. And I'm just going to go ahead and put this in the S tier right off the bat because this is one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. And I'm sure it is a bunch of other people's. It is the epitome of the tragedy of Logan's character. For so long, he has suffered in this life. He just wants to get by and survive and be left alone, but he's constantly dragged into stuff that he can't get out of. Somber, but it's actually a heartwarming ending because Logan finally does the right thing that he's always been meaning to do, but could never do in the right way. And yeah, in Days of Future Past, it's sort of the same thing. It's like he finally does right. It's just such a sad movie, but in like a great way. And I know a lot of people don't like sad movies, but this is just perfect. And Hugh Jackman, it's like a love letter for Wolverine, and he just pours his entire heart into this movie. And Patrick Stewart is great, and the supporting cast is amazing, and the fight scenes, it's just bloody and brutal, and it's exactly how Wolverine should have a send-off. Nothing changes about Deadpool at all, except we get Cable, Josh Brolin, and Zazie Beetz, and a bunch of other cast characters. We get a Brad Pitt cameo, which is kind of insane. It's less cringy at times, but also more cringy at times in the first movie. So we're going to go ahead and put Deadpool right up here at B tier. And yeah, it's just a fun time, and I enjoyed it. Simple as that. So I completely skipped over Apocalypse. I just remembered Apocalypse existed. And we're just going to go ahead and put it in the D tier. And the less said of Apocalypse, the better. I mean, I forgot about it. That's how forgettable the movie is. Somehow they made an X-Men movie worse than Last Stand. One, how is that possible? And two, how can James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender be playing the same characters that haven't really aged that much, like almost 40 years later? How does any of this make sense? And it doesn't make sense. And everything that was great about Dark Phoenix, they just completely ruin in this movie. And every character sucks. No one is fun. Goes in the F. Gets in the F. Come on, put it in the F. There you go. It's not as bad as everyone's making out to be. Yeah, it's not good. It's like a Buffy episode that's just okay. It's got your monster of the week. It's got your creature feature. It's got your teen love interests. It's got all that stuff that it made Buffy such a watchable show. It's just not as good as Buffy. The only bad part about it is the accents. It's like truly, truly atrocious. I like who they've cast as the Mutants, and I would like to see them come back in other different movies. But overall, it's just an okay movie. Honestly, I would put it C tier. It's not like, it's okay to watch. There are moments to like about it, but overall, it's just C tier. Not worse than Apocalypse. It's not worse than the first Wolverine movie. It's not worse than The Last Stand, and it's definitely not worse than Dark Phoenix. I think it's a good list. I think it's a really good list. If you disagree, well, go rewatch some of these movies, and you'll remember anything in the B tier, A tier, and S tier are just like great movies, great comic book movies. And for Logan, it's just a great movie straight up. I'm excited to see what Marvel does now that they have X-Men finally back under the full umbrella of the cinematic universe. And it'll be interesting to see how they fold them back in. Buy your X-Men stocks. Buy all the X-Men stocks. Buy, buy, buy.